So Fayçal, so nice that you could be here. So we thought we'd start by maybe asking you a little bit about your practice in particular and its sort of relationship to the rhythm of the city and particularly what we filter in and filter out in sort of urbanized environments. So maybe beginning with the context or beginning with where we are right now to discuss the city of Dakar and what you think of the Biennale.
Well, in fact, I just arrived one day before today, so I was here yesterday and today. So my experience of Dakar is only 2 days experience, so it's not a very deep experience, I would say.
And what are your initial impressions of Dakar as a city?
I already came 10 years ago, in fact, and I was just in the neighborhood of at the port, so I just saw the port at that time, and now I can see a little bit more of the city. So I don't know, I'm not really surprised of the city. I feel like I already have some connection with African cities. So first I go to Algeria quite often, and I visited a city like Dar es Salaam, or I don't know, I have some ideas of the African capitals, which is a city with a lot of people, and you have to slalom, as you can say. So yeah, for me, this time especially, I feel it like very, very natural without any, except some problems of the city because it's not your city, so it's sometimes difficult. But I feel like I feel a little bit like at home here. I don't have any.
So it feels like home. It's like it feels a lot like Algeria to some extent.
Yeah, there's something like old French colonies. I would say like the architecture of Algeria and the architecture of Dakar are not the same.
No.
But I was talking about the French architecture in Algeria, which really interesting because it looks like French architecture but with African people living in it. So it has changed, even the building has changed, but the way the organization of the city has to adapt to the African way of life, I could say. So yeah, I find it quite interesting. But as I told you, really, it was quite easy. I didn't find it very difficult.
So the first work I encountered by you would have been Le Métier d'Emploi, which was the work where you went and read your CV out publicly in the streets of Paris. I was just curious to know whether that was your first intervention into spatial environments.
Yeah, this work I titled it in English as the job market, I think, because that's the place where you look for a job. And that's interesting that you begin your interview by this sort of intervention, because there are like city intervention, like how an artist can find his place in a city. And this video you're talking about is a performance where it was a quite difficult period of life because I was coming to Paris and I just discovered the city there, and I didn't have any job, and I was looking for a job desperately. I couldn't find anything. So I think when you are in such a situation, like of a crisis situation, you focus on the crisis situation that look like yours. So you begin to see people who are asking for money in the streets. You begin to look at the musicians. So your point of view is focus on other areas. So the job market was something related to that, the situation of the artist, how to be an artist in the city without any money, and how a crisis situation can create a solution, like finding a job, and at the same time like create an artwork. At the end I didn't find any job, but I did an artwork with it.
And I think that the next work that that a lot of people have encountered is Philippe of 2008. So 5 years later, and you're still working in Paris and working in these contexts. And that was a statue of Tutankhamun that you were bamboozling people into thinking that it was a street artist. So I was wondering if you could talk about the connection between those projects and perhaps how your work developed between those two projects.
Yeah, definitely, that's right. There's like a gap between the job market. The first one was in 2003, and the other one it was like 5 years later. So 5 years later is like a way that I knew how the city works, and I begin to understand how to find a solution. And Philippe is a solution, like a money solution, because it's a mannequin, a plastic mannequin that is on the public space, and supposed to be a statue, how do you say, a performer who imitates a statue. So yeah, Philippe is a way of finding a solution, how an art work can help you to earn money. And at the same time, this is a sort of allegoria of what is a piece of art, what is a sculpture. How people, if they know it's a sculpture, react, and if they know if it's a human being, they react in front of it. So that's a really interesting link between the two works. Exactly.
I think the next work that I think is an interesting shift, maybe moving further from the language of sculpture and more into the formal qualities of film, was the work you did, the Message project, which was where you spliced together footage from the English and Arabic version of the film, The Message. And you talk in one interview I read about your encounter with that film. But what I wanted to know is more about this kind of idea of the film work dealing with language, and perhaps another idea which you've talked about is this sort of inversion or double inversion of reality. So if you could speak about the relationship perhaps between language and reality, and how those things play in your work, because they seem to be reoccurring points.
Yeah, exactly. The Message project, so it's a movie that has been shot in two versions, in Arabic and English version, and I just edited the movie to discuss English actor with Arab one. What is interesting is the purpose of the movie is to propose actors who look like people who are going to watch the movie. So the American can see like American actors playing Arabs, and the Arab one can have like in front of their eyes like a very famous Arab actor. So you can recognize yourself in the actor. That's a process of filmic process, to help the spectator to be in relation with the actor. So this is really interesting how the cinema choose specific actors for a specific audience. So my goal was to make a connection between these two versions. How you can, the process is quite easy, because like at the end you have the English who speak and Arab reply, and they understand themselves. So you can see how these two cultures can be linked by a simple movie. But as you said, yeah, the question of audience is quite present in this movie.
And what about the importance of culture, both the Arabic culture and then French culture intertwining, because you spoke about the relationships between French architecture and Algeria, for example. Perhaps more to elaborate on this idea of culture as being sort of, how do you say, manifold and perhaps a complex idea that someone like Edward Glisson would have talked about, a world in relation, and connectivity and creolization. I think that filters, and we're in Dakar, which is an example.
Yeah. I would say like let's say Algiers. Algiers is a city, it's a French city at the beginning, like really French. I mean, you can see it, and with people with Algerian living in it. And I would say, like me, I live in France with an Algerian body, with someone who has French education living in his body also. So there's something really related to what you are and where you live, and how you imagine process to live, to live in peace in this in your area, with your way of thinking and with your back culture. But the Message project also refers to the relation that the second generation has with the first generation, with their parents. When you are in another country, you speak with your parents in a language and they reply in another language. This happens a lot of time. With Arab people who speak French with their parents, the parents don't speak French, they reply in Arabic. So the process of the Message project is something really exists, and I grew up with this. And even when the project has been made, the first movie by Mustafa Akkad, he as an Arab person, he thought about making this movie in two versions. He could think about just do it in English or just in Arabic, but even in his way of thinking, he already has an integration of this concept of having a double language. So this is something. I would like to refer to another work that I have, which is not a video, but it's a sculpture that shows a globe spinning so fast that all the countries of the world disappear. I think we are living this sort of world today. This confusion, but also like melting pot, and we don't know how to manage this sort of thing. Or we try to find solution to manage this sort of new situation. I mean, I say new, but it's not so new, because now, I mean, we have this idea of one word for now like 50 years, but we're still trying to manage our relation with the nations, and so in a way we are in a post-nationalist situation, I think, especially with this network, with the internet, and with this way of communication and of traveling. So this is a real interesting situation.
Could you talk about your two projects that you have coming up, both the work here in Dakar called When You Look Into the Fire, and the exhibition at the Musée Group called Intervening Space, curated by Yasmina Regal?
So there's two different projects, like in the form, in the way that I present them, and also it's they talk about a similar thing, which is I would say the disappearance. Vögele Kultur Zentrum is the original title. When you look into the fire, it's a work about disappearance. And we were talking about the city of Dakar, and the city of Paris also. But Vögele Kultur Zentrum, it's a work that I brought from Dubai, from the city of Dubai. So I think this work is also connected to the city, because Vögele Kultur Zentrum is an advertisement for let's say a light shop. So you can see a little girl watching a light bulb, and because this cardboard, this light box is in the city with a lot of sun, after a certain time the image disappears. And you can have like a poetic connection with this little girl. You can imagine that she looked into the fire such a long time that the fire make her disappear. So that's the purpose of the work, I think. So it's a way of erasing the anthropomorphic figure, like make it disappear the body. And the other work, half of what you see, is the work that I show at the Mosaic Room. It's also a question of taking off information. And the process is really easy. It's a disco ball with many mirrors that I take off all the mirror of the disco ball, and it remains only one mirror on the disco ball. And this mirror is lighted by a light that turn, that spin, with a synchronization of the last mirror. So you have the reflection of this mirror on the wall, and on the other side you have the shadow of the disco ball, and you can see the moon. It's like a model, an astronomical model, which is not referring to the reality, but more of a way of thinking and of a way of seeing the world. But this is really a way for me to integrate some scientific concept of gravitation, of the way of the universe works, but in a completely fictional way. But I really love this work. I find it really it's very smooth and really peaceful, and I invite you to come, definitely.